No way!
This is just gonna go.
It's
so
just
bad.
here.
Okay.
Just
In less than a second, my mind knew everything was about to change. So, as you can probably see, I have concussion, problems with memory. That seems to be coming up now and again. My memory is very bad, and then there was something, but I can't remember what it was. But I can't remember what it was I was going to say. I can't remember.
Please hold.
Unfortunately, I managed to quite seriously injure myself in an incident one evening for which I was hospitalized. It's probably the closest I've ever been to genuinely terrified for what my future would hold or the consequences that would completely change. Fortunately, with plenty of friends and family around, they've helped me understand the events of that evening. I have, as you can see, no idea what happened, besides a couple of moments. But celebrating summer in true style, we were making the most of our mate's above ground pool. A nice way to cool off, with a few very warm days here in Denmark, weirdly. Having spent all of the previous day in and out of the pool, jumping in today was a nice continuation of that. So I ran up to the pool and I jumped in. I surfaced a little dazed, with pain radiating throughout my upper half of my body, my neck, spine, and my head. I turned to my fiancée, also in the pool, and I just held on to her for support. I told her I've hit my head. Keep an eye on me. I had tensed up in a position similar to that of a T-pose character, I guess, floating on the waterline at the edge of the pool. My mate offered to call a doctor and book an appointment for what we call out of hours. As he speaks with a professional to ask a few questions, my fiancée calls out to him to bring something to his attention. Seemingly unaware of exactly what I had done, I had covered the fact that my hair was turning red. My mate's wife grabs a tea towel for my head to help with the bleeding, at which point the professional on the phone has instructed my mate to hang up the phone and dial 112 immediately. So he makes the call and explains the situation, where he is told an ambulance is on its way. It took less than 10 minutes for them to arrive. The sirens could be heard for a good couple of minutes as it was approaching, so everyone knew it was on its way. Still sat in the pool. I made a few jokes about how stupid I am, try and lighten the situation a bit. Now, whilst I have limited memory of the whole situation, relying on others to fill in the missing pieces, I have limited memory of the whole situation.
That's the spirit.
I do remember the two gentlemen who arrived that evening. These guys were absolutely incredible. I felt respected, regardless of me being an idiot and looking like it. I was very well looked after. They really were incredibly supportive. So I moved from the pool onto a gurney, which took a while, as it was important. All movements were slow, and I was in a certain position, etc. Then the pain started to take complete control of the top half of my body. I'm put into the back of the ambulance and the doors are closed as they run their assessments before they leave and go anywhere. Around 20 minutes later, the paramedic exits the ambulance to speak with my best mate and my fiancée. The gentleman explains that I may have either fractured or broken a vertebra, and I'm going to be transported to the trauma unit in the city, as the symptoms shown are worrying. My fiancée asks if there's any risk of paralysis. They explain they're unsure, as whilst it's unlikely, it can't be ruled out at this stage. They explain they will be taking me in with sirens on to avoid any start-stop movement at junctions and so on, as this could be damaging for the spine and the position I was laying in. Now, I only remember 4 moments of the entire thing overall. The first being this channel. It makes sense that the moments that I remember are all the ones of love, humour or excitement. Good things in my life. The good things that the brain holds on for. I remember trying to spell ADHDecent to the paramedic in the back of the ambulance, I think, after what I can assume is me plugging my channel while strapped to a board with a spine injury. But hey, gotta grind, right? If the paramedics who helped me sees this, I just want to say a massive thank you for everything you did that evening. Seriously, it really was a pleasure to meet you, even in shitty circumstances. I won't be entering the diving in the next Olympics, if that's any consolation.
I'm sorry to hear that.
The second moment was in the trauma unit, being given a heads up that just around the corner were a large number of medical professionals waiting for my arrival, and not to be nervous.
What were they doing there?
They weren't kidding either. I was still surprised. I didn't have a great range of motion, that being none, actually, with being strapped down everywhere to a table. But I did politely introduce myself to them from the table, thank them for coming in today. Okay, maybe the pain relief was talking there.
Excellent.
Just after that, I saw my fiancée beside my gurney. I couldn't believe she had made it there so quickly, but I was grateful. I would later turn out that was in fact over an hour after my arrival. This I found out. That's quite shaking when you realise you have no recollection or understanding of what you're missing, what's real, what's not, etc. So no, at this moment in time, it was still me and the pros in the trauma unit. They would keep my fiancée updated during this time as she'd not yet reached the hospital. Roughly 90 minutes after my admission, my fiancée is greeted by a nurse who guides her to me, a large white room with my vitals on an 80-inch TV fixed to the wall. TV shows these days, they're just all about the numbers. Still strapped to the board, neck encased too, with 2 EMTs, 3 nurses and a doctor surrounding me. I looked to my fiancée and I cried. I said I didn't want her to see me like this. I think at this point my head was starting to analyse in some form and started to realise it could be quite serious, that there could be quite serious repercussions from it. I later transferred to a bed where I would spend the next 36 hours and admitted with a nice room. In my room, the doctor comes in and I'm speaking with my fiancée and explains it all. He would explain that he's amazed I'm not paralysed. And he states just how lucky I am not to be. At that point, I broke down in tears. I don't think even now I'm able to process it. It's hard to convince yourself of something being a possibility when it didn't actually happen. But I am trying to respect it and be grateful for coming out of this in what could be considered the best possible outcome. That evening, I spoke with my dad on the phone back home in the UK, and my partner spoke with my best mates to update them as well. None of which I can remember, unfortunately. Sorry, Dad. The following day, the pain is very real. I'm in and out of consciousness consistently. I'm unable to move on my own. I'm awake every so often. I see my fiancée asleep on the bench across from the room before I pass out again. That's pretty much what it was like the entire time. My final memory would be that afternoon. Now slightly raised up in bed as I'm starting to get a little tiny bit of movement. My mates walk in through the door, all of them. I cried about that since too. These guys are my family. They really are incredible. It was incredibly warming to see them arrive. It was a moment of grounding. I started to focus on the incredible things I do have in my life. I'm very fortunate when it comes to that. It's something I will never take for granted. With concussion being no stranger to this group, we had a good laugh about it all. And I started to relax into the recovery phase for the first time, I think. They call me a sentimental bitch, and I am, but fuck it. The doctor would later come in and explain that they're still looking into the damage done, but the scan is clean. He explains that I've likely snapped a ligament in my neck and potentially my shoulders, so I find out I'll be staying in for now as they continue looking into it. That same day, my O2 levels started dropping. I'd have trouble breathing, which was also being seen to. More pain relief. My breathing would later actually return to normal levels that evening. My consciousness would still be all over the place. That night, I seemed to be the worst I was at. Confusion all night, asking ridiculous questions to my partner, drifting in and out, fear. The following morning, I'd finally get some sleep for the first time since it happened. I had a whole hour, which was glorious. Finally, after more scans, I'd finally find out just how close I came. The head split upon impact. The bleeding would later stop. The concussion technically is still ongoing, actually, but I'm certainly over the worst of it now. As for my neck and my spine, I had suffered a compression fracture of my T5 vertebra and 2 wedge fractures on my T6 and my T7. I would then discover the reason it was not seen at first was the initial scans had covered down to only my T4 and not below, mainly because the pain was around that area. At this moment in time, the focus is on pain management, rehabilitation, working on very small gradual movements to improve, and then waiting for it to pass. I am able to spend small amounts of time at my desk, if I break it up throughout each day, allowing myself to continue with everything here, and not drive myself completely crazy at the same time.
If you say so.
It's been an absurd turn of events that I would have never predicted. I am incredibly lucky. And stupid, but lucky. Go grab yourself a brew. And as always, stay safe, folks. I will return.